5 facts why Jesus isn't God. Why can't Jesus be God? If Jesus were God, would God need to prove to himself that he won't fall to the devil's temptation? Isn't that right? It's written God's Spirit led Jesus to be tested, but also that God can't be tempted. Because God is completely immune to temptation. This is probably one of the things that makes God divine and sets him apart from humans. He doesn't need to justify himself, especially to the devil. Only humans can be tempted, not God, and the devil knows this better than anyone. James 1:13. So if God can't be tempted, and the devil knows this, didn't he realize he was facing his creator? And this temptation must offer something the tempted person lacks, but if it doesn't appeal, it's not really temptation. For instance, how can you tempt someone? The fact that man is not attracted, if it is impossible for God to succumb to temptation, and the devil basically has nothing to offer in return for the temptation, to someone who already has the whole world, then a question arises: why should God go into the desert to take power over the whole world from the devil if Jesus is God who created, rules the whole world? But it looks rather like Jesus is not God but fully human. Then this story makes sense. Because how then to explain or understand that God is testing God? That is, the Father tests the Son in the wilderness. This says that one God does not trust another God, subjects or allows him to be tested. But if we consider that Jesus is still fully human, then this test makes sense. Then Jesus' answer to the devil's temptation to worship him becomes clear. Jesus responded that he only worships God the Father because if we consider that Jesus is still God, then he deceived the devil by saying he was not God and he himself worships God and even succumbed to fear of it. Without saying it was the devil, Jesus should have worshipped him, as Jesus created the devil. Why worship a rude criminal and cover up injustice? Could God worship Satan? Then what's the difference between him and Satan? Jesus said Satan was evil from the start. But how can we trust Jesus if he lies too, since all lies are sin? But if Jesus is human, not God, then there's no deception. 2. Any lie is a sin. God cannot lie. 3rd, God tempts no one. James chapter 1. Not even the devil. 4. Temptation without appeal isn't temptation for the tempted. James 1:14. Yet, if we consider Jesus as fully human, on whom God's Spirit descended after baptism in Jordan, just before the desert journey, and Spirit is like power. In Hebrew, it's anointing, hence anointed, meaning Messiah. And this is to pass these trials, and this anointing is already help from the Father, not Jesus' own power, which shows that since he needed anointing for help, he lacked his own strength to resist the devil. So, seeing Jesus as fully human causes no conflict. But if Jesus is God, why does God the Father descend from heaven to aid God the Son? Because if God needs support to pass a test, then it's not God. God doesn't need another God's support. This shows weakness and imperfection, proving his fully human nature.